Thank you. Hello, everyone. It is great to be here. Thank you so much for all of the organising team and for everyone who's put this event together. It's also great to be the last session between you and the drinks. So today I'm going to talk about my work. I'm an artist, but I originally trained and worked for a few years as an environmental engineer. And so up here you can see baby me, that's me in my first year of environmental engineering. You can see very fresh, nerdy, idealistic. And I chose to study this because I was always obsessed with the relationship between technology and ecology, particularly the way our technologies produce an imagination for how we think about the environment and how we act in it. I also, chose this degree because I really wanted to solve environmental problems. But after a few years of working in the field, I was working on projects that often looked like this. So you're looking at a housing development, you're probably seeing not a lot of trees, low biodiversity, not a lot of public transport, every surface is a road or a roof. And I got really disillusioned, like how could I be working on a project like this and it be called sustainable, right? So I left engineering because I wanted to seek out spaces where I could ask critical questions about the way we build our technologies and about the conditions which bring them about. Who gets to decide that cities are built like this? Working on projects like this, design to me didn't seem like a problem-solving activity, but it seemed like an enactment of values, and I really want to think about that today as design as this enactment of values. So just to give you a quick snapshot of some of my early work, it'll give you a bit of context. I went out and I started to create artworks that looked something like this. So this is a system. It's a laundromat that is partnered with a wetland in a mutualistic relationship. And it's a response to the question that, can a piece of water infrastructure be a love story? So the wetland needs the laundromat to survive, it's getting water from there, and the laundromat needs the wetland to do all its filtration and cleaning. Does this work? What do we mean when we ask that question, are our technologies working? Well, the answer is yes, but it's a little bit different to how you might expect a laundromat normally to function. It's a bit slower. If you look really closely in there, you can see that the water coming out of the wetland is a little bit green, so maybe I wouldn't drink it. But is it adequate to wash clothes? Yes, it is. And so here is an example of a system that gives an opportunity for other species to thrive, but in doing so, it means we need to kind of rethink our expectations of how our technologies function. To give you another example, this is a project also exploring this question of efficiency, but more in the digital realm. And it is a collaboration with one of my longtime collaborators, Sam Levine, and it is a smell-based dating service. This was our promotional video. And I was interested in smell because it evades computation and digitization, right? It's really hard to put smell in digital interfaces. But I also really wanted to know what it would be like to make the intimate decision of who you're going to date based only on smell and not on any other information like visual information or demographics. And so we launched the project in New York City. We had several hundred people sign up, and this was the response.
All right, we have a story for all you singles looking to mingle out there.
You have Tinder, you have Hinge, you have Bumble, Grindr.
This is crazy, but it works.
This probably takes the cake.
Smell dating.
Smell dating.
Smell dating.
Smell dating. Did you hear what I said? Because I don't think you reacted appropriately.
So it really got a lot of attention and evoked this huge reaction. How did it work? We sent out t-shirts to our participants. We asked them to wear them for 3 days without deodorant, just so that we got the best data source possible. They sent the T-shirts back to us. We cut them into swatches from the highest data region of the shirt, of course. And then you would receive 10 swatches just with numbers of the people in your group. And you would choose who you were interested in meeting, and if there was a mutual match, you would get an email like this one. Tega, wow, I really liked your sample. Little bit creepy. But it was really successful. We also ran it in Shanghai, and just last year I got a call from the organizer in Shanghai saying that a couple was getting married and that they wanted me to bless their wedding. I know. I also matched and met my own partner through smell dating, so art becomes life. But a physical interface like smell is not efficient. Our apartment's filled up with dirty T-shirts. It is not a project that can scale like most software projects can scale. But on the other hand, this inefficiency produces a really different way of encountering others and of knowing the world. So in the last few years, my work has really looked at questions of climate, AI, and computation. So what's the role of emerging forms of computation and how we address the climate crisis? Technologies produce certain ways of seeing and knowing, as we have just seen in smell dating. And they're therefore leverage points of careful investigation, and I think artists and designers have a really important role in really scrutinising and examining this. And so in recent years, this work that I've been doing is looking at these questions of climate and computing, and particularly how technologies produce, again, this way of imagining the environment. So what does it mean that we're using data-driven systems to think and understand about the environment? Of course, a lot of our knowledge of climate comes from computation and code, right? Climate models, computation is key in how we understand these things. But I think we also need to be critical of the way that computation is presenting the environment in particular ways. So to explore this, and to explore the sort of planetary turn, in 2019 I collaborated with Julian Oliver and Bengt Sojun to create this project called Asunder. And Asunder realises an AI-driven environmental manager that proposes and simulates future alterations to Earth's environment to keep it safely within planetary boundaries. So the manager generates future geoengineering scenarios, and using an AI image generation model, a GAN, we trained this GAN on open source satellite imagery and then used it to generate these fictional satellite tiles. These tiles, so you can see this is a tile of Florida, and the Asunder system has sort of put this whole landmass out into the ocean. And so then we took these fictional tiles and then used a real climate model to model them and look at how these scenarios would perform into the future. So this work is really a provocation for thinking about the hope of AI for a tool of automating environmental decision-making. And through its absurdity, it makes these sort of ridiculous scenarios. It points to some of the commonplace hopes and dreams we have for data-driven systems. So some of these are like that these technologies are going to offer a more objective view of the world. And another really common one is that this more objective view is going to let us sort of depoliticize environmental decision-making. So it's going to help us make decisions better. And this is what's driving these sort of computational platforms that we're seeing everywhere in the sort of climate technology space. So AI for Earth from Microsoft, and there's a whole sort of suite of these sorts of computing infrastructures that people are rushing towards to try to address the climate crisis. And we need these things. We need responses to where we're at, like, how hot is it today? This is an urgent thing we need to address. But we also need to be asking critical questions of what these technologies are, how they're shaping our views and what they're doing. So after making Asunder, I began thinking about how AI systems are shaping environmental management already in far more subtle ways than we might realise. So algorithmic media platforms, recommendation engines, and the ad-driven business model of the internet is already driven by AI and is shaping climate coverage and our imagination for climate. The media is a crucial space for catalysing climate awareness, But when these systems become optimized for engagement, as they have, I would argue the climate crisis is not given anywhere near the coverage it deserves. Just in recent weeks, to give you an example, the sea temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean have been 5-6 degrees above the average, and a newspaper like the New York Times has done one story on this, right? And so this project, this next work, also a collaboration with Sam Levine, is called Synthetic Messenger. And it is examining the ad-driven business model of the internet and its role in the climate crisis. It takes the form of 100 bots, each animated with quivering hands, so you can see one on the screen here. And the bots spend their days visiting climate news and then clicking on all the ads that run alongside each article. And we made this work in 2021, so we were still online, pandemic times. And as such, we made it as this sort of Zoom performance where you would join a Zoom call and commune with these 100 bots as they're going about their business.
Click.
Scroll.
Maybe this is going to give some people PTSD after the pandemic. I don't know.
Click.
Scroll.
Scroll.
Click.
Scroll.
Click.
Scroll.
Scroll.
Click. Scroll. Click.
Scroll. Click. Scroll.
Okay, I'll leave it there. The hands and the voices were donated by friends and people in our community. But with every click they make back on the advertiser's server, a tiny transaction would happen between advertiser and news outlet. And theoretically, the value of each article would increase, perhaps also causing it to be amplified and aggregated across the internet. And so the premise of this work really is that those who control the media cycle have an outsized influence on the climate cycle. And this is something that the fossil fuel industry has known for a really long time. To go back a little to 2005, 2006, BP and their PR team launched this carbon footprint calculator, the first of its kind, that allowed individuals to calculate what their carbon footprint was. This is a very crafty narrative and rhetorical strategy to frame the climate crisis as something that should be dealt with on an individual level rather than something that industry has responsibility for. So here we see media manipulation tactics, pre-digital, pre-internet. Of course, media platforms mean that these manipulations take a different form, and there's an evolving catalogue of strategies that leverage algorithmic logics, one of which is the use of media trolls and bots to amplify misinformation. And while the recent anxieties about bots sometimes might be disproportionate to their actual influence, their use to spread and amplify climate misinformation is unquestionably an issue in a media ecosystem that favours climate deniers and fossil fuel interests. This example, just from the last few weeks, is an army of fake social media accounts that are defending the United Arab Emirates hosting and presidency of the latest COP summit, right? You can see then even finished off with AI-generated avatars. So these are strategies that are at play at the moment. Again, those who control the media cycle control the carbon cycle. All right, I'm going to share one more project before I close. I just have a few more minutes. And I want to just bring this talk back to this question of agency. Agency, the capacity to act, to make decisions, to steer one's life. In the two works we've just seen, these works are trying to leverage the increased agency that we give computational systems for better climate or environmental outcomes, right? In Asunder, we see AI, an AI manager. AI is given this sort of decision-making capacity. And in Synthetic Messenger, we see software that orchestrates bot-driven media manipulation strategies. So each work models an intervention where some kind of data-driven system is sort of given the agency. After making these works, I got really interested in, could we find a model which distributes agency in different ways, right? Could we think differently and not sort of imagine technology as being this thing that's taking decision-making out of our hands, But are there ways we could center other forms of intelligence and knowing in the systems we're building? And to give you a couple of examples from artists who are doing this, works that I love, Lauren Lee McCarthy is an American artist. In her project Lauren, she created this smart home system complete with sensors and cameras and heating and lighting, and she installed it into volunteers' homes. Except instead of having an AI make decisions about the smart home and how it operated, she herself stood in and would watch the cameras and decide what should happen in each person's home. And in doing this, she's centering human intelligence and decision-making over statistical and artificial forms, right? To give you another example, Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg's piece, Wilding of Mars, I love this work. It addresses the contemporary space race. And in this piece, Ginsberg proposes that Mars not be colonised by humans or billionaires, as is the imaginary now, but what would it be like if Mars instead was colonised by plants in an experiment of sort of unsteered evolution? If Mars was seeded with plants and sort of left alone, this ecosystem could evolve free of human influence. And so in this work, it furnishes an imagination for a technological regime that augments the agency and intelligence of plant life rather than human or statistical AI systems. So this last project of mine that I'll share also responds to this question, and it's called Solar Protocol. And it's trying to attribute decision-making agency to the environment. So I've been working on this since 2021. It's a collaboration between myself, Alex Nathanson, Benedetta Piantella, and a whole lot of volunteers and artists around the world. To start, we're interested in designing small-scale computational systems powered by solar. And each of these small web servers could serve a website. However, if you've played around with solar-powered computing, you'll know that in the winter or at certain times of the year, your website's going to go down because there's just simply not enough light. And so we began working with people around the world to build a network of these servers in different time zones, latitudes, and weather systems. And so then we created this network that collectively shares a website and sends out the website, which is solarprotocol.net, from whichever server's in the most sunshine at the time. We wrote custom networking software so that each server checks in with the network, shares its solar data, and one of them becomes the active server. So if you visit the website at different times of the day or year, that website's going to be coming from a different place in the world. This is some of the data from the system. So the red is the sun and the green is whichever server was the active server at the time. And this also means that computational work, so the work to generate the website and send it out, happens wherever there's the most naturally available energy, where there's the most sun. And so here, decisions about how the network's operated and how routing across the world happens based on a sort of natural intelligence or environmental intelligence. It's about the interplay between sun and climate rather than having a sort of internal statistical model that's making those decisions. So rather than creating machines to automate environments, what would the inverse look like? What would machines that are automated by their environments look like? How might we design with environmental intelligences rather than artificial ones? We were very inspired by this project. You're probably familiar with it. By Low Tech magazine, they basically redesigned their whole website so it can run on solar, and in redesigning the website, reduced the size of assets and sort of came up with a new design language that's much lighter data, lighter environmental impact. And we sort of adopted some of these techniques too. So using minimal JavaScript, we don't do any tracking on the site because that's obviously energy intensive, and trying to minimize the size of assets on the site. Here's a little bit of footage of us installing servers. Of course, the design challenges are one thing, but this is a big, messy community project. Half our servers are down at any one time because people break up with their boyfriends, have to move house, the server gets put into a cupboard, it comes back 6 months later, they change IP address, and so on. So I love this project because it's as much about the sort of strength of the social network as it is a technical endeavour. And we recently launched our first online exhibition on the site. So basically, we've produced a sort of artist-run community cloud, right, that's solar-powered. And so in the coming year, we're going to be publishing different projects and continuing to host things on this network. Particularly projects that are thinking about, like, what does low-carbon culture look like? How can we sort of produce thinking around low-carbon futures? To conclude, I'm going to finish up with a quote from a New York-based artist, Austin Wade Smith, who talks about these kinds of esoteric server projects as feral computing, where he uses the term feral to describe servers that have been freed from server farms. Feral servers are those that aren't domesticated, commodified, and controlled by Silicon Valley. Feral computing is really an invitation to see our relationship with technology in any other way than that which makes the world easier for us. How can we create technology which doesn't make the world easier, but bigger, more awesome, and more expressive? Thank you.
Tega brain, ladies and gentlemen. My goodness, that was absolutely amazing.
Thank you.